Hello, and welcome to our SewingSangha. You'll find a series of videos here on how to make a Rakusu in the Soto Zen tradition, and more specifically, in the tradition of Upaya Zen Center and Roshi Joan Halifax's lineage. We'll go through each step in detail to help you create your own Rakusu. You might want to like the video and subscribe to the channel so that you can find it again easily, and click on the notification bell so you'll learn when new videos are posted. If you have any questions or comments, please post them to the comments section and we'll do our best to answer them. I'm Cheryl Dacian, and today we're going to be going over, at the request of some in our Sangha, needles and threads. So let's go to the downward facing camera and get started. All right, needles and threads. Excuse me, goodness. Now, one of the things I'd like to recommend is that you probably have a packet or two of needles in your stash someplace or in your sewing basket, or perhaps your mother or grandmother's sewing basket. But I would like to recommend that you buy a new pack of needles because older needles can become tarnished or even rusty, and they can be very difficult then to pass through the fabric and give a lot of extra pull and stress as you're sewing. So for instance, you may have a pack like this. I found this from in my grandmother's stash. And, here is a needle book from, I think it was an advertisement of some sort, but it's filled to the brim with some actually very nice needles. And some of them have held up very nicely and others not so much. So we won't be using any from this pack, but this might be a trip down memory lane for you, and you might be familiar with that. So instead, what I'll be recommending is to buy a new package of needles. They're not very expensive, but to get a nice quality of needles. One brand is actually quite nice, is Bonin. They're made in France. I believe that's pronounced properly, Bohin. And the other is John James. And this is actually my favorite. Our friend Liz from our group recommends these, and I bought a pack on her recommendation and really fell in love with them. So the quilting needles are very nice because they have different lengths. So you can try out the different lengths, which one is going to fit you best. And they have nice, larger size eyes to be able to go through, to be able to thread the needle quite easily. So that's a consideration for you. Now, the other thing would be thread. And in the fabric video, we talked a little bit more about what kind of fabric you decide on. If you want cotton, linen, a linen silk blend, have even a lightweight wool. Those are some possibilities for base fabrics. And you do want a natural fibers, 100% natural if you possibly can. And you want to try to match your thread to your fabric. So for instance, if you're using a linen fabric, you want a linen thread. Cotton is, there are some lovely 100% cotton threads out there. This one is a quilting cotton, and with a Gutermann's, which is a terrific brand. It's a German brand. And there are also silk threads that are really wonderful and work nicely with cotton as well. But definitely take a look at a quilting weight thread in black to go with your black thread fabric. So if you do have questions about specific brands or any of that, please leave it in the section below or email me at sewingsangha@gmail.com. And I'll do my best to help you sort through the myriad of different choices you might have. And I'll leave a couple of links below to some sources for you. So anytime you have these types of any type of thread, especially if it's an all-natural thread, you can find organic cotton, linen, a cotton polyester blend, those types of things. The thread needs to be conditioned. Let me show you how to do that. What we're going to do is pull out enough thread about the length of your arm. All right, so that'll be it's tempting to want to go, like, ooh, lots and lots of thread, so you don't have to rethread the needle, but we're going to go a length of the arm. It's a little too much to have it too long, and you're going to run out and you have to rethread many times if it's too short. So let's take the length of thread that's about the length of our arm. Okay. And then we're going to condition the thread. I'm going to be using beeswax. And beeswax is kind of the tradition. It's certainly used in historic garment making and other hand sewing. Lots of history to use beeswax. Now, beeswax is not necessarily vegan, so you might want to find, and in the supplies video, I mentioned about using a different type of thread conditioner that's made from a paraffin wax or an ethically sourced palm oil. So those are options for you if vegan is a consideration. So obviously silk would not be vegan either, or wool. But so at any rate, we're going to take the thread and just pull that right through our beeswax. You can find just a little chunk of beeswax or little holders that have it more commercially, like Singer Sewing. Clover is another great brand for sewing notions, and they have resources for that. Right, so we've conditioned our thread. This takes a couple of passes for the whole thread. And I'm just going to run it through my fingers just to get rid if there is any lump. Plus it feels nice, you have some nice beeswax. And I'm going to find the tip of the thread, so the end of the thread. Now, there are a couple of different ways that you can approach threading a needle. And the traditional way really is to take the needle in your non-dominant hand and your thread in your dominant and stick in your mouth. And I think you've probably seen your mom. If you haven't sewn on buttons, you've probably seen her sew on a button, and she's stick the end in her mouth and then come over here and just thread that needle. Now let's see if I can do it. All right, here we go. Hold it up so it shows through. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. So you see, even doing this many times, in fact, I practiced this video and it threaded it right away. And here, now it's not cooperating. Okay, there we go. So, and again, don't feel badly if you don't get it the first try. Actually, I think that this may be a good example to realize that it might not just go right in the very first time. So just be persistent and you'll be successful. Now, another way to do this, and I know it's sad to take the thread out when, when you had to make a few tries to get it threaded, is something called needling the thread. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hold the thread. And it's a little hard with the camera in my way, but we're going to hold the end of the thread in between our thumb and forefinger. Just a teeny little tip shows through. And instead of threading the needle, I'm going to just push the eye of the needle down on the thread. See, it's actually much easier. I almost always do that technique instead. Alrighty, so, and again, it may take a couple of tries, but that's a method I actually use the most. Now, another possibility, and especially if you have quilting needles with a nice large eye, is to use a needle threader. And these you can find these it might come in like a pack of needles might include one of these, or you can buy a 3-pack from a Singer Sewing company. It might be you might even have a little sewing kit in your bag that has, in your junk drawer that has one of these in it. So it has a little thin wire. Gosh, let's see if I can show that very well. Here we go. Maybe to show this little diamond shape of a wire. And I'm just going to insert that right into the eye of the needle. Oops. I'm trying to focus the camera and my eyes at the same time. And see, I've got that little triangle poking out of my the needle, the eye of the needle. So then I'll just thread that through. much larger hole. Oh, see, it's stuck to the beeswax, stuck to my, made it stick to my finger. Yeah, one of those little things that happen. All right, so stick that through. I don't like to stick it all the way through. You can, but I don't want to be, because then it might have to take a tug to pull it through, and I don't want to break the needle threader. They're kind of delicate. All right, so let's try this one more time. There we go. All right, so let me make sure you can see that. So you can visualize that the threader is sticking through the eye of the needle, and then the thread goes through that little part that was sticking through. And then I'm going to just gently pull that all the way out. All right. Then we take that out. All right. So we're successful. And again, it's par for the course for these things to take a couple of tries. So don't worry about that. So the next thing would be how to make a knot. And making a knot in your thread is sometimes can be a little tricky. It doesn't want to work very well sometimes. And actually, let me kind of rub my fingers here on my pants to get some of the beeswax off. And one of the things that you can do is loop your thread over your forefinger. You see like a little tail hanging out, and then roll that. You have to push hard and roll between your fingers. All right. Then grab the little end, the little tail here, and made it a very, very teeny tiny knot. But you can also just loop the thread and pull it through, and that makes a nice knot. All right. There's another method, which is called the quilter's knot. Let me show you that. Let's get rid of that guy. And what we'll do is we're going to hold our needle in our right hand. Oopsie. There we go, a little stray thread. And I'm going to take the long end of my thread here, and I'm going to hold him upright. All right, so it's like a little unicorn here. And I'm going to put this thread behind the needle. Okay, it's hard to kind of differentiate that, but so I'm going to hold the thread behind the needle. Okay, and then pinch them together. And then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and make sure I pinch those little loops I just made. Just pinch them, and then grab the end of the needle and just gently pull, and viola. Look at that, we've got a nice little knot. And that's actually, again, that's the knot, the method I almost always use for regular thread. Now, when you've seen the demonstrations I use a pearl cotton embroidery floss for some of these so that you can see it better, and or even a lightweight yarn, and it wouldn't work very well with a thicker thread. But with a quilting thread or a smaller gauge thread, that method works very nicely. A quilter's knot. So just trim this guy. A little tidy, You don't have to be too fussy with it, but all right, so now that we have our needle threaded and knotted, one of the things you might consider doing, since it can feel like a chore to thread the needle, and as you're sewing along, having to stop your sewing, redoing this whole process, it may kind of take away from kind of the meditative aspect of sewing your rakusu. So one of the things that you can do, and I actually do this a lot, is to let's take a piece of paper, and I'm going to fold it in half. You say, oh, I'm kind of pre-folded. We're going to fold them in half, fold them in fourths. There we go. So we have a nice little packet. And then what I can do is just park this guy right here. And then I can just gently gather that thread right into that little channel. So I've done that here, my favorite clippies. And so here are 4 different threaded needles that I can keep relatively separately. I mean, they're easy to then unfurl. And that way, when I'm have this little packet, I can use the clippy to hold it together. And then I've got 4 threaded needles that I've done in a row. So, so it's actually a very efficient way to do that, hopefully to keep you from having too many headaches from trying to thread a needle. Now, one of the questions that came up too is if you really cannot thread the needle because of eyesight issues, um, other issues that with whether your mobility in your fingers or any of that kind of thing, I highly recommend that you find a friend who can thread the needle for you, and then make these little packets of threaded needles that are conditioned, have a little knot on them, and they're ready to work with. The important thing really is not to let something like that stop you. We all have different restrictions in the way that we can do certain things. And as we age, I mean, many of the things that I used to be able to do easily, I can no longer do at all. And asking for help is not a problem. That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Now, of course, you're going to be doing as much of your Rakusu sewing as you possibly can. But I think with some of these things, like, for instance, cutting the strips and cutting them in a straight line, threading your needles, having those things prepared, all of these are kind of the mise en place, if you will, the cooking terms. So you're going to have, just like when you're cooking, you have your spices that you measure and put in little cups. And, if someone else does that for you, your little sous chef, if you will, that doesn't take away from you being the cook or from you being the author of your Rakusu. So as you come up with some of these hurdles, please do ask the question. If one of your teachers is from Upaya, one of the Upaya priests, have a chat with them and talk with them about some of your concerns and some of the ways that you can manage being able to do this on your own. So in one respect, creating these videos, for instance, my goal is to basically be sitting at your side to help you with your eyes and your hands and your skill set to be able to be successful and to do this mindfully and with great care and that sacred space of creating something that will help you to remind you of your vows, living by vow, and that we wear the Buddha's robe. We are wearing the Tathagata's teachings, and he had Ananda to help him. Ananda was the person who, helped organize things for him to, I'm sure, help him with his robes, help him with so many of the daily things, the mise en place of life. And that didn't detract at all from the Buddha's teachings. So I just would love to be your Ananda. And so again, if you have other questions about that, I know it kind of took a serious turn on something that seems pretty basic of threading a needle, but I think it is an important point. So please do ask questions if you like, and email me if you have other concerns or other things that you need to discuss. All right. All right, so thank you for listening. And if you do have questions or comments, like I said, be sure to leave them in the comments section. And then also email at SewingSangha.com or at gmail.com. And if you have other issues or comments or concerns about the way we're progressing or the way, the things that might be okay or not okay with the way you're working with your Rakusu. Do check with Monchin for the Jukai. She's a Jukai coordinator, as well as your teacher to take a look at any of the hurdles that you might be having and be sure that we have a solution for them. So take care. I'll see you in the next one.